Hey guys, and welcome to this brand new and first video. I'm pleased to meet you. My name's the Curse Keeper, and today I'm reviewing the Mageseeker, Riot Forge's brand new game, which released in last mid-April. If all goes well, this video should come out shortly after its release.
You serious?
This action-adventure game was made by Digital Sun Studio, who are also the creators behind Moonlighter, another pixel art indie game that some of you might already know. Before we start, I just want to make a quick minute to tell you that I'm also a streamer on Twitch. I do 3 to 4 sessions a week with many different games at twitch.tv/thecursekeeper, so you're welcome to tune in. Another note is that this is the start of my channel, and it also happens to be my very first time doing any sort of video game review. So if I miss any crucial details, or there are some things you'd want me to add in future uploads, be sure to write it in the comments below. You can also give me any other feedback like editing, while of course doing this in a respectful manner. With that out of the way, how good is the Mageseeker? Well, let me be honest, this game is very good. I'd even say great. It's a short story featuring a famous character from the popular MOBA League of Legends. And when I say short story, I really mean it, as the game is about 10 to 15 hours long of uninterrupted gameplay on average. I personally finished it in 30 hours plus at medium difficulty, but that's while searching for intricate details and because I left the game open on pause while being AFK multiple times. We're then talking about a 15 to 20 hours rough of gameplay for me. I will say that this new installment offers a fresh and unique experience that one could look for in the League of Legends IP. The gameplay is smooth and very fun, the story is rich, intriguing, and interesting, the visuals are stunning, and the world building offered is phenomenal. It all around makes it for a great title for new and old League fans alike. Now, what's it about? The Mageseeker is a game that talks a lot about the past and current events from Demacia, a kingdom from the League of Legends world that resents magic since long ago. This will probably be an important installment for any Demacian fan, as the last piece of content Riot gave Demacia created some holes and unclear motives for its future. This title is here for what I think is tying numerous loose ends and progresses the story into a better path for the future. It inserts a lot of narrative holes left by Riot and launches the lore forward, works on certain character arcs, and reaffirms their goals and identities. When it comes to the game's premise itself, the Mageseeker takes place directly at the end of Lux's comic, the last piece of content Demacia received, which came out 4 years ago. It also came out when the newest character Sylas was introduced to League of Legends roster. Finally, free from his prison, Sylas puts the city in flame with the goal of revolution in mind. Another interesting release in the same time frame was the Rune Wars lore and what it meant for the future of Runeterra. I won't be focusing on those intricate details of these lore and story entries in this video, and will be focusing on the game itself. The rest will come in separate content later, so stay tuned for more. If you do want to know more about the narrative shift this game offers, I suggest looking at videos that will be linked in the description below. With that in mind, and before I give my personal final score, let's dive into this review. Let's recap and briefly explain the premise. In Riot Forge's new release, the story takes place in League's universe, more precisely Demacia, a monarchic kingdom that was born centuries ago. Most notably, it was built upon the ruse of a cataclysmic war, commonly known as the Rune Wars. As the intro states to you, magic is forbidden and people guilty of magical affinities are hunted down by the crown. More specifically, mages are persecuted and tracked by the infamous Mageseeker Order, an elite group whose job is to stop mages at all costs, with no option being too violent or too reckless. The game starts, like said earlier, as Sylas, a direct victim of this empire built upon terror, finally escapes his prison after stealing the powers of his only friend, Luxana Crownguard. Now a free man, Sylas seeks only one thing: vengeance and retribution. And this is where the game starts you off. Now that we know who the character is and where the story places him, it's time for the main attraction, the gameplay. The Mageseeker is an action-adventure RPG and even shares some elements of roguelike and hack and slash. It's also a 2D pixel art that uses the top-to-bottom camera feature. The camera movement and the overall combat systems are very good. Your overall mission is to explore Demacia's territory while hacking your way into dozens of Demacian soldiers and other creatures alike. With every successful heist, you gather more mages to your cause and thus grow the revolution. But don't worry, there are also some very interesting side stories to uncover along your playthrough. Now, on the mechanical side of the gameplay, the combat. It's fun, but has some clear flaws in certain aspects. On one hand, the combat is fast and there's a real push into overall control as the player gets to choose between power customization and the tempo they fight with. On the other hand though, many known issues make the encounters a bit tricky and awkward at times. To explain it in further details, let's dive in deeper into the player's many actions. Sylas' moves consist of few tricks: light attacks, which are your basic hits, fast with decent damage, heavy attacks that are slower than the previous ones but pack a whole lot more as they can even break shield and certain terrain, chain lashes that act as a gap close, and more. Not only do they all do respectable amount of damage, but they also can be used in different situations. This implement is used throughout the whole story, both as an exploration tool and a combat tool. You can close on great distances in a short period of time, or simply pass over difficult and unsafe platforms, or again, reposition yourself through a tough fight when grabbing enemies. I really liked this feature. As simple as it was, it felt very satisfying to use. And it was an exceptionally cool thing to see Sylas employ his chains in different ways than his League counterpart, to be your own little Demacian Spider-Man. Anyone who plays remotely enough League of Legends, though, knows this one main fact. The most notable thing about Sylas is his ability to steal, copy, and recreate his enemies' spells. Just like in League, Sylas can use his opponents' spells against them. Although this iconic ability is your greatest tool on Summoner's Rift, here it's not exactly the case. Now don't get me wrong, stealing your foe's power is very cool and a unique feature to the Mageseeker, but it gets old very fast. This is primarily where the combat gets trickier as well. The main reason for this is the controls for this ability that are weird to get used to, and what it actually means for you when you do use it. To use an enemy's magic, aim on the desired target with either your mouse or your right joystick, depending on your configuration. Then click the button and you're set. I played the game with a controller, so I used the right joystick, then LB to steal, right B to throw back. Now the reason this attack is awkward to use is because it works on a auto-lock mechanic, something as you would know that clips your cursor when aiming near a target. This lock-on feature is a bit janky and weird, and you'll probably switch 1,000 times between targets when you're moving and running too fast. I've stopped a numerous amount of time myself since it was cutting the tempo of combat, trying to properly aim to the right target without the cursor switching to another enemy. Even though this mechanic is specifically built in to make the players think strategically in combat, it doesn't really excel to do it all the time. When fighting a huge crowd of enemies, for example, that generally comes in multiple waves, it was almost impossible for me to use it effectively. Either steal your enemy's magic and open yourself to receive incoming damage as you need to stand still and properly aim mid-combat, or use other tools available in your kit and fight in a melee play style. You can't also just swing spells at anyone, which is where the strategy of the combat comes from. Well, you can, but it's just not as effective. To briefly explain it, the Mageseeker's combat revolves around elemental magic, 6 elements to be precise: fire, ice, wind, nature, mystic, and storm. The player with a good eye will also note that these are the same 6 elements from Lux's Elementalist skin. Each of these elements possesses a counterpart that is effective against it, and vice versa. For example, fire is a direct counter to ice, its opposite. Ice is then, you guessed it, fire's weakness. This is crucial information to the player that needs to think carefully about which spells to steal, as throwing a spell with the same element of its target will be half as effective. Furthermore, each enemy has a cooldown, just like in League, where you'll have to wait before stealing from the same target after casting its spell. It will not activate though if the player steals an enemy's magic but then borrows another target's magic, as it will replace the current stolen and non-casted spell with the new one. On paper, this means that the player can turn around the combat to their will, while carefully planning which spells to throw next. But since the game prohibits you to spam the same spell from the same enemy, which is supposed to be a good thing, forces you to switch to another target. This slows the combat down as all the enemy mages are mostly range casters that run around the corner of the map when you approach them. You have to, again, slow down a bit to properly aim and open yourself up to many blasts from every corner of the map. While it is a bit annoying to have to run around with a weird lock-on mechanic, thankfully this change at will feature still makes the fight a bit more malleable, as you can plan your rotations among the many foes you'll face. I haven't been stealing too much from my enemies during my playthrough though, but I did enjoy this possibility when I was all out of mana against a tough crowd of soldier and mages. I'm going to be honest, stealing spells are very cool at first, but like I said a bit earlier, I wasn't using it a lot, especially in the late game when I had everything unlocked. Now I may be the only one doing this, or maybe I just like overcomplicating things for me, could be that after all, but I was using my attacks a bit more, and mostly because when I was casting my spells, I threw the ones that required the most mana. As you can imagine, my mana bar was completely drained most of the time. It also meant that I was consistently losing HP while trying to use magic. Although I have my fair share of criticism with this mechanic, it's not all bad, as there are moments where you get to shine while using it. The best instances I found myself stealing magic was during boss fights, as yes, Sylas can even steal from the biggest foes of the game. This is a very cool feature, as these encounters are very intense and are particularly good at testing your comprehension of the game. Being allowed to borrow from gigantic enemies, ramp up the complexity of the fights, and represent perfectly what Sylas excels in: one-on-one combat. And so thankfully in this game, these moments are well crafted for the players, and every boss's available ult are a real rush to use. There isn't just spell stealing in this game though, as Sylas is a powerful mage himself. He can obtain his own arsenal for him to throw. The player can equip any spells they unlock in the 4 spell slot available in the upper left corner. These moves are acquired along the game and are collected when you steal and copy a spell from an enemy, which makes the stealing mechanic mandatory if you want to power up and progress throughout the story. Though they are available permanently and switched at the player's will in any rest site, they themselves cost mana, unlike stolen spells. Anything Sylas steal is free of cost, reinforcing the importance of this feature. You can fight by entering combat with your own magic, steal an enemy's spells, and keep switching between both. This rewards the smart players and makes the combat even more fluid. Regain mana, you just need to attack with either fast or heavy punches, and as you would expect, your heavy attacks give you back more mana. The final core feature I'll talk to you about is the one thing that I found myself using and having fun experimenting through the combat. It's also the last thing I can confidently explain without spoiling you more interesting things. This thing that I'm talking about, or rather those things that I'm talking about, are various moves called combos. Combos, or elemental combos if you will, are special attacks that activates when the player mixes dashes, chain grabs, and many punch in between. These special attacks are inherent to Sylas as the adventure starts. You must unlock them by hiring special mages scattered in Demacia's territory. Some are located in the countryside, others hide deep in mystical forests, and some others are even imprisoned just like Sylas used to be. Once you've recruited them, they'll disappear and will be waiting for you back to your hideout. Your combos and new feature will be ready to equip before venturing off again. There are 6 combos available in the Mageseeker, all sharing the same elements from earlier. There are thus 36 possible combinations. There are combos for your dashes, for your chain lashes, for your light attacks, and even for your heavy attacks, so the combat possibilities are insane. The moveset brings me to my next point. Who are we fighting here? The enemies you encounter in the Mageseeker are shining in this game. They are simple, yet interactive to fight against. You'll mostly find yourself fighting Demacian type enemy, basic soldiers, crown guards, and you name it. But for the global explanation of the enemies, there are a lot of them, and they all have many different functions. Some are tankier than most, others apply debuffs to you, some are quick and hard to catch up, Some are very strong at casting spells, while some others pack a real punch. But most importantly, most of them allow you to turn the combat in your favor, as they will mostly all possess a spell with a different element ready for you to steal. Now, moving away from basic enemies, the many different bosses are varied, and when I say vary, I mean excessively fun to duel. While the smaller bosses introduce to you lots of new ways to play the game, to new characters and new lore, the big ones offer a real challenge. And they also introduce new characters and new lore. They all have a unique gimmick and are perfectly designed, in my opinion, as high-key combat moment in the game. These behemoths are undoubtedly here to reinforce and test your experience and ability as player throughout your journey. While some of bosses are rather easier, most of them can be unbelievably stressful to fight. Now, I may be biased because I'm a huge League of Legends fan myself after all, but I can say without a shred of doubt that the Mageseeker offers one of the best boss fight I've ever had when it comes to this genre of games. The Garen boss fight, the Jarvan and Shyvana, and the final boss were simply a thrilling and great thing to experience. Must I add even that they're exhilarating to defeat. Digital Sun really knocked it out of the park with these bosses, and I'm 100% certain you'll have as much fun as I did experiencing it for the first time as well. That's pretty much it for the combat. There are some other things you can use in your arsenal, but then again, this would go into endgame and spoiler territory, and I do not want to ruin the experience to you guys. There is a negative point that I need to bring up though, and it has been talked about in other reviews and amongst other players, and it's that you cannot actually cancel an attack. Unfortunately, a big down of the combat is the inability to cancel your attacks, even your small ones, by dashing or chain lashing. Once you throw a punch, you need to wait for the animation to be over before disengaging or replaying your situation. This is very awkward at times, especially when the combat is supposed to be very fast. It feels janky to get used to. You'll most likely lose a few HP to this in the beginning. Heck, as a roguelike enjoyer, I know I did. I also faced a couple of bugs along the way, mainly one where enemies just wouldn't die. It happened to me twice, which didn't totally ruin my experience, except for this one time where the said enemy was blocking my mission's progress. I needed to clear everything in this specific dungeon area and couldn't keep on with the single bird that wouldn't take a hit and wouldn't damage me when hitting me as well. I had to manually jump off the ledge to take 5 HP per fall for 100 plus HP. It was either this and starting to my checkpoint or restarting the whole mission. Now, it only took me 5 minutes, granted, but I was a bit annoyed, as you can expect. The second time didn't obstruct my progress though, so I brushed it off. Just know that it can probably be possible if not patched yet. Now onto the visual. This game looks phenomenal. It, no joke, by itself reignited my desire to do more pixel art. In the Mageseeker, everything is clean, the art style, the environment design, and its many backgrounds. From the first minute of my playthrough to the last, I was simply at awe with what Digital gave to us. They had one jump, and oh boy, I dare say they understood the assignment. This game has, as I would call it, a very more arcade style of graphic, while still being able to retain a lot and grand attention to detail. This game is colorful, whether through its characters, its environment, the VFX, and many attacks along with them. They all help to immerse the player in this world-building experience the dev team created. Every moment in the capital is in a pure marble clean white, as you'd expect from a stoic and stern country as Demacia. The buildings feel solid, but also have a rough feel to them. This reflects how Demacians are proud, but are also very grounded and simple people. You feel the simple and righteous upright life an average Demacian goes through compared to any other Runeterrans. A small detail that made me chuckle a bit were the Demacian villagers who were instantly running and slamming their doors, calling for help whenever you would pass by, or how knocking on their doors led to an aggressive response. I must add that not only did the art team did a fantastic and phenomenal job on the visuals, but the atmosphere as well. Jumping through the grand ramparts of Demacia is liberating. As you skid and search your way through the different archives, when you clear out strongholds, you feel the emotions of dread, the injustice that the mage population faces every day, and it also quickly turns into disgust as you enter secret dungeons used as laboratories. You can only imagine what an average mage endures in these slums. And lastly, the animations are out of this world. They're crazy good. It's a big reason I open up Asseprite again. Everything feels so smooth and fleshed out. From the giant golden and blue banners that flop in the wind attached to the great capital walls, to the small things such as your own attacks, the many critters running by in the forest, the many leaves dancing on the branches, or when you fall a tree to make a bridge out of the trunk. The enemy's attacks are clear and crisp, my favorite one being the Crown Guard soldier whenever they raise their shield. The boss fights looks absolutely stunning. The cool thing about these types of games, a League of Legends independent game, is that you get to experience your beloved champions in a new vantage point. You've never seen them before. They're not just revolved around 4 basic abilities and a passive. They feel like actual characters of the universe they live in. The most notable example for me was Garen, who is just so perfect both in character arc and animation. In his boss fight, he is simply badass and imposing. And finally, the last topic there is to talk about before the spoilers roll in is the soundtrack and overall music and sound design the Mageseeker offers. It is astounding. Gareth Coker is the compositor, and it honestly shows. This name rings you a bell? It should. Gareth is the musical genius responsible for the iconic OSTs we know, such as Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, The Rune King, a League of Legends story, which is the other big game Riot Forge published in the past, made by Airship Syndicate, Hollow Infinite, Arc Genesis 1 and 2, to name a few. Once again, just like we felt in Ori, Coker really brings the depth to this world and a spark of life. The music is separated in different themes throughout the story. Moments of respites, infiltrations and missions and boss fights. One moment, you are bombarded by the grand and righteous hymn of the capital, with its many horn instruments. I really felt the perception of Demacia as of itself through this theme, how its countrymen and elite soldiers alike see themselves as noble people. I like the contrast of exploring the so-called proud kingdom through some sad and darker music. It switched the perspective and showed that there isn't so much good going on in this country at present time. The music just adds to the world building. You hear the dread and misery as you explore the dungeons to uncover Demacia's dark secret. You feel the mystical and sometimes gloomish atmosphere of the ancient and magical forests. And most importantly, you feel Sylas's anger and burning rage, his aching thirst for vengeance. The music isn't all about intensity and danger though. The core strength of Mageseeker's music is how they treat moments of calm and respite. The tracks Leilani and The Hideout are marvelous to listen. They're really more calm and quieter than their counterparts. The Hideout represents hope and also hard work. You feel the sense of community as you pass through the many districts, while Mages seems to be working day and night, any scraps of any new life they can find. The guitar riff is very soothing. It adds a mystical touch to the song. It is beautifully paired with a piano track. It is definitely in my top favorite of the game. The boss's music and theme, just like the animation and gameplay, deliver on a solid experience. They add on to the feeling of key moment of the game and ramp up the intensity of the fight. I must send you my highest regards and thanks to you, Gareth Coker, as you once again knocked it out of the park. I'm literally devouring the complete album for like the 10th time as I'm writing the script. I even give it a joyful listen while in my car. It's calming and it helps me think. A great story told in many different ways, especially by its music. While we're talking about sound design, there is one thing that bugged me and many other players as well, and it has to be the lack of voice acting. It's partial as you can only hear some of Morgana's monologues, one at the beginning and a second one later.
In this land, magic is as natural as the soil we walk on. But mages are not free.
There are also some iconic lines taken directly from League, such as many champions' grunts, screams, and most notably Sylas' laugh whenever he's stealing a spell. It is the same one used in League when Sylas uses his heart. There is an explanation though on why the exclusion of voice acting ended up being the final choice. When asked about this on Twitter in an Ask Me Anything post made by Digital Sun Studio, the team mentioned that even if they truly wanted to do a full-on voice acting, they couldn't as they didn't have the proper experience to make it work. The game was in the beginning supposed to be without any voice at all. Digital Sun was lucky enough to get help from Riot Forge to add some flavor to the dialogue and the game. So I feel lucky myself to get a bit more than what was going to be initially delivered, but we're still just a bit disappointed. Now this is where this section ends. The rest of this video will feature some spoilers. If you haven't played the game yet for yourself and want to fully experience it, I recommend stopping this video now. Hey, maybe you can come back later. This is possible after all. Alright, I'll catch you later. Okay, are they gone now? Yeah, they're gone. Let's dive in. Although I had an absolute blast playing this game, especially as a League fan who's fully invested in its lore for a very long time, there are still some things that disappointed me or that I expected more from the Mageseeker. Here are my main gripes with this game. A big recurring thing in the Mageseeker is your hideout and how much time you spend in it. This is where Sylas sleeps or selects his next missions after all, so you do find yourself here most of the time. Through your progression, you'll recruit more mages. Once you gather enough of them, you unlock certain milestones. You can track all of these to Yop's station. Some useful features with this are the station upgrades, which grants you access to more bonuses available for you to use and equip. My major letdown with this is that it also evolves your hideout, which, believe me, yes, I know is very cool on paper, but it's purely aesthetic. Apart from the actual station, any other zone of your hideout gets a visual upgrade, which adds nothing but a feeling of evolution and progression. Once you're back from a successful mission, Yop will greet you and throw you a heads up to tell you that a certain district has underwent changes. For example, the infirmary shifts from a simple corner with a sick mage in a sleeping bag to an actual small-scale sized hospital with plenty of mages to heal the less fortunate and hurt. Now this is very cool, but my problem is that it gives you nothing much. It's not even a shop where you could buy yourself healing supplies or just a quick heal. It doesn't do anything. This isn't all bad, but I wish some places, for example, those with big icons on the map, would be interactable. Example of these zones are the cooking zone, the infirmary, training zone, where it could have been nice to just test your spells. There could have been collectibles or food, a supply shop, anything. I hear your questions, but then doesn't this give you anything? Well, no, it doesn't. Well, actually scratch that. It does. It gives you a chest that's hidden and a piece of journal that contains a cool story or an Easter egg. Overall, I just felt this place to be, well, just empty. Although even, sure, there's people walking, but what can you do except just selecting missions? Lastly, are the achievements or lack of. Again, a very minor and probably unimportant for some of you. This is more of a I wish thing as a lore completionist. It totally doesn't change the gameplay at all. You'll still have all the fun you can, but I just feel like the team could have added more of it. Like one or two, specifically lore-wise, like said. Well, you see, for the lore bit I keep mentioning, in this game, the Mageseeker, the game tells you early on that there are temporary and important dialogues options that do appear on certain characters from time to time. They are important as they progress the lore of certain characters or concept and will show up after certain or pivotal missions in the game. They disappear if you don't go see them in a certain period of time, so to check them if you don't want to miss out on some juicy lore stuff. I sincerely think that adding an all dialogue or all special dialogue achievement could have been cool, just like a bit in The Ruined King. Heck, there's an achievement for petting a horse, which yes, is very funny and I liked it, but like, why not put some more achievement for lore enjoyers as well? Same goes for collecting or reading all the notes, and hell, even finishing the game. at hardest difficulty. That could have been neat. Then again, and for the last time, I know this isn't Matron anyway, and you'll still have a blast playing this game. It's just that in my opinion again, it could have been a nice touch for the players to show off their epic lore achievements. And here we are to the closing statement of this review. Is this game any good? Yes, it's a pretty decent title. I think that the Mageseeker is a pretty good addition to any fan of action, adventure, pixel art games. It's a short game, so it doesn't demand too much. It has a great story featuring many cool new characters. The gameplay is fun, very fast-paced, and it's thrilling. The visuals are stunning, and the animations are out of this world. The music and atmosphere, the world Digital Sun brought to life, is immersive and intriguing. And I think this is a must-play title for any League fan who is looking for a quick and easy League of Legends game to pick up. Although there's a lack of features, it makes it for a unique and great experience. I am overall giving the Mageseeker a score of 9 out of 10 for the story, 10 out of 10 in visuals and animation, 10 out of 10 in music and sound design, 7 out of 10 in the gameplay, 5 out of 10 in special features and others, for a final score of roughly 8 out of 10. Well, after weeks of work, 3 different scripts, 25 pages and over 8,000 words later, that concludes this review. I want to congratulate Digital Sun for their hard work, as this is one of my personal favorite action-adventure games of all time. And thank you for bringing League's world to life. Exploring Demacia was a real treat to play. I can't wait to see your next upcoming project. And thank you to everyone who reached the end of this video. How did you guys experience the Mageseeker? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are there some things you would have wished as well? Be sure to tell me in the comments below. Also keep in mind that these are in my own opinions and doesn't mean your enjoyment of the game is invalid or incorrect. These videos takes a lot of time and demand a ton of work. I'm very proud of how this first one turned out. If you like this review and want to support the channel, yank that subscribe button with all your glory and might, and be sure to hit the bell for future projects on this channel. A friendly reminder that I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/thecursekeeper, and I do so for 3 to 4 times a week, so you can encourage me there as well. I also have Twitter and more links. Everything will be in the description below. That's going to be it for me today though, so have a great day, stay cursed my friend, and until next time.